All right, good afternoon, everybody. Today we're going to be talking about objections in the sales process and overcoming those objections. So I'm going to share my screen. Everybody seeing my screen?
Yep.
Okay, great.
Yep.
I'm going to start out with a video. So I am going to try to do that right now. And if you cannot hear it or see it, please let me know.
Your screen stopped sharing, Sal. I don't know if you
Yeah,
meant to do
no,
that. Okay.
I'm going to it right now.
Gotcha.
I just gotta make sure that you can hear the sound. And I'm gonna play. If you can't hear this, let me know.
This gotta be the one. I gotta do this. It's gotta be me. It's gonna be.
Are you ready?
Yeah. Sorry. I'm ready. Hey, does this suit make me look fat?
No. Your face does. Okay, let's check you out. All right.
It's a clip, Ma.
Are you sure? All right, now, it's sale time, so remember, we don't take no...
No shit from anyone.
No.
We don't take no prisoners.
We don't take no for an answer.
Oh, yeah. We don't take no for an answer. We don't take no for an answer. We don't take no for an answer.
No.
Okie dokie.
No.
Gotcha. Thanks. Terrific. Thanks for your time.
Let me say, maybe.
Well, then, I'd just like to add that the spectrometer readout on the nickel-cadmium alloy mix indicates a good rich strobe and fade, decreasing incidence of wear to the pressure plate. If you could just...
Whoa, little fella, you're not speaking my language.
What my associate is trying to say is that our new brake pads are really cool. You're not even gonna believe it. Like, let's say you're driving along the road with your family, and you're driving along, la-li-la, woo, and then all of a sudden there's a truck tire in the middle of the road, and you hit the brakes. Whoa, that was close. Now let's see what happens when you're driving with the other guy's brake pads. You're driving along, and all of a sudden the kids are yelling from the back seat, I gotta go to the bathroom, Daddy. Not now, damn it. Truck tire. I can't stop. Help! There's a cliff. And your family's screaming, oh my God, we're burning alive! No, I can't feel my legs! In comes a meat wagon! Wee, wee, wee. And the medic gets out and says, oh my God! New guy's in the corner puking his guts out. All because you want to save a couple extra pennies. And to me, it doesn't...
Get out. Now.
Sir.
Do you validate?
Now.
Okay, thank you.
Is anybody at a sales meeting that felt like it went like that? I've had a couple that are probably pretty close. That was Tommy Boy, and the objection in that case was, I'm not sure. And we went from, I'm not sure, to setting things on fire. So hopefully, after we go through some of these steps for overcoming objections, we'll come back to Tommy Boy and see if maybe he has learned how to handle an objection a little bit better than that. So is everybody seeing my screen now?
Yes.
Summer? Okay. So we're going to start with a little background information. What is a sales objection? Right? A sales objection is a rebuttal from a prospect or a current customer during the sales process that explicitly states a reason why they will not be buying from you at the moment. What is objection handling? Objection handling is when a prospect customer presents a concern about the product or service that you're selling, and the salesperson responds in a way that alleviates those concerns. Right, so we want to talk about today objections and how we might handle an objection. So important thing to distinguish is the difference between a brush off and a legitimate objection. Legitimate objections are authentic. They're real obstacles for doing business between you and the prospect. A brush off is just an excuse, right? So a couple of examples, an objection would be, I want to work with you, but we had a really bad experience with your company a few years ago, and we're not allowed to use you anymore, right? That's an objection. That is an obstacle to moving forward. A brush off might be, I'm too busy to talk to you right now. So they're not saying no, they're just saying, basically, get away from me. More tricky is the hybrid, right? So this might be an example of something that is a hybrid. We don't have any business to send you because the title decision has been taken away from us by all of our by our customers in all of our transactions. So the joint venture excuse. Now that is an objection, but it may be used in a way that is truly a brush off. So when they say they have transactions where they have no choice, are they lying? No, they're probably legit about that. But is it all of their transactions? Probably not. So they're using what is an objection in a manner that is really a brush off. So what I hope to do today is help you identify when you're getting a brush off, and then when you have a legitimate objection, how you might go about handling that. Right? And we're going to do that with 4 steps. Right, step 1 is to listen actively. Step 2 is to understand the objection. Step 3 is to be empathetic. And step 4 is to follow up. So we're going to take these in turn, starting with active listening. Now, we've talked about active listening in the past. We talked about it when we reviewed Colleen Stanley's book. We talked about it in January when we met at the Grandover. We listened to a couple of videos where some experts were giving us some advice about listening. And so we all know that active listening is very important, but it's important enough that we go over it again, in my opinion. So first off, be attentive, right? We want to be paying attention to the person. We really want to understand what he or she is telling us. Right? And we're going to do that by asking open-ended questions, right? We don't want the prospect to parrot our words. We want them to use their words. And we're going to do that by asking probing questions and open-ended questions. At times, we might want to request clarification just so that we're sure we understand the objection. We're going to do our best to suspend judgment or advice. If you remember Celeste Headley, we watched a TED Talk with her in January, and she said that when we have a conversation, we often listen with the intent to reply instead of with the intent to understand, and that her advice to us was, thoughts will come into your head, let them come in and let them leave. We want to be in tune with the person's feelings, right? If they're feeling frustrated, if they're feeling confused, we want to try to understand what is going on with them. And we can summarize, which not only shows the person that we've been listening to them, but it also helps us understand, right? If we summarize and we get the summary wrong, then the prospect can tell us, no, that's not quite right. Or if we get it right, then we understand what the person is telling us. So a little bit more about listening. Again, we want to listen with the intent to understand, not with the intent to reply. We got to resist that temptation to respond. Let the person finish their thought completely. Let them get all of it out, all of what the objection is. Let's try not to cut them off. We just want to stay focused on what they're telling us. And don't be defensive and ignore any negative emotions that you may be feeling, which can be hard. I know for me, I've had conversations with people before where I felt like they were saying something about one of my staff members that simply could not be true. And I would get defensive, and the emotions that I had were combative. Like, I want to tell this person that they're wrong, that so-and-so would never do that. But that's not the point. This is not the point where we have that sort of debate. We want to understand what they're telling us, right? And if they're telling us, if they're giving us feedback about something, all feedback is good feedback. We just want to understand what they're saying. Ask questions. Again, ask questions that are reflective of your desire to understand, and allow your body language to communicate that. Again, I return to Celeste Headley's TED Talk, where she said, you can do things that show the person that you're listening, or you can actually listen. So, what I would say is put your body in a place where you can listen. Don't look out the window. Don't look at your phone. Don't look at your wristwatch. Put your body in a position where you're open and you can hear what the person is telling you. Step 2, understand the objection. And this is really important. We want to understand what the person is telling us. And oftentimes, the words that are coming out of their mouth really are not describing what the objection is. And it's either because they can't articulate it, or they just don't want to tell you the real reason. And so by listening and asking questions, we're going to explore what it is that they're truly trying to tell us. And a good strategy is to ask permission for that. So you could say to the customer, I want to understand what you're telling me. Do I have your permission to dig a little deeper? And we're going to do that with open-ended questions, right? We don't want to cross-examine. We're not looking for questions that result in yes or no answers. We want to ask open-ended questions. We want to do the talking. We want to let them get out all it is that they want to say about what it is that they're objecting to. After you've heard the objection, just to make sure that you understand it, you might want to restate it or summarize. Something like, just to be clear, what I hear you saying is, and then after you've confirmed that you do understand them, you might ask, okay, what else? Is there anything else? Or you might want to ask why, like why they have this particular objection. You understand the objection, but let's talk about the whys. Step 3, be empathetic. Again, this is a theme that we've explored in the past, particularly in Colleen Stanley's book, Sales Success Through Emotional Intelligence. And I've told you the importance of it in the past. I'm going to tell you again, empathy is central to every successful sales effort. Right? We shouldn't be selling for the pure joy or benefit of making money, although that is obviously important to us. But we're selling because we have people who have pain points. Our job is to discover those pain points and hopefully give them a product or service that alleviates those pain points, right? And so we need to understand what those pain points are, and then we need to be understanding of those pain points. Always give credence to the prospect or the customer's concerns. Even if you don't understand it, or it's not the way that you would feel under those circumstances, validate their feelings, because they're their feelings. Try not to get frustrated or impatient. Never argue with the prospect. Never tell them that they have no right to feel the way that they're feeling. If you can resolve the issue, resolve it quickly. If you cannot resolve it, ask permission to get more time. So something like, I'm going to get you an answer. I'm going to find out about this objection. Can you give me a week or 2 weeks to talk to my manager or another person so that I can get you a good response. And then lastly, following up. If you can give a response, then give it, but make it short and clear and to the point. Never wing it. Don't just throw something out there for the sake of throwing out there. If you asked for permission to follow up and told them that you would, then make sure that you do within the time frames that you established. And if you have given them an answer to their objection, confirm that it satisfies the concern. Now, a couple more of the strategies in this area, in this step 4. One is isolating the objection, right? So if they've given you an objection, what you want to do is just sort of put that objection on an island, right? Make sure that it's the only objection. So something like, if I can satisfy this concern, do you think we'd be able to move forward together? Right, so we want to isolate that concern and make sure that it's the only one, because we're going to put it off to the side. Either we can solve it or not, but we want to know if we can move forward. And then secondly, leveraging social proof, right? So by that, I mean telling a story perhaps of something similar that happened with a different customer. So if you have a story that you can tell, something like, a few months ago, I was talking to a paralegal or attorney who had your same concern, but we were able to get past it by doing X, Y, and Z, but she started using us, and now she's one of our better customers, right? So if you have a story that you can tell, sometimes leveraging that story, particularly if the person you're talking to knows the person who the story is about, then that may be a way to have a good follow-up and to solve the problem. Okay, so let's test this with a purely nonsensical hypothetical, right? So in this hypothetical, the prospect says to the sales rep, we can't take this any further because I'm afraid of spiders and there's one in your logo. All right, so somebody tells us that, we might think that is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, you're talking about a logo, not a real spider, but that's not what we're going to do, right? We're not going to pass judgment on the person. We're going to try to understand this fear of hers, right? So we do that with open-ended questions. We try to find out, like, how does this phobia manifest itself? Is it only with spiders, like when you see a spider in real life? Is it in video, a drawing a spider? Does that set you off? When did this phobia first, did you first notice it? Are you saying that even pictures make you uncomfortable, right? So we want to understand what this person is telling us. And once we felt like we understand, we exercise empathy. I totally understand. Phobias can have a really serious effect on everyday life. I think we could probably remove the logo from your instance of the tool. Would that help? Then following up, great. So it seems like we do have a solution. We can move forward. If there's no other objections, then I'll just let my team know that we won't have that image in our logo on your tool, right? So that is an example of those 4 steps in practice in sort of a hypothetical way. But I did come up with 8 different scenarios in our world, in our industry, and I'd like to take us through those and see what they might look like if we're utilizing these steps. So we'll start with the first scenario. First scenario, the customer or the prospect says, we don't have any orders to send you because they're all accounted for, right? This is the joint venture objection. And so how do we tackle that? So we might say something like, oh, I know, I get it. It's just getting worse and worse these days, isn't it? I know that stinks for you because you would prefer to send it to one of the folks that you like working with, right? So there's empathy in play. Not getting frustrated or mad or defensive, just putting it out there that we know this is frustrating. Do you mind if I explore this with you a little bit, right? So asking for permission to dig a little deeper. How many orders do you do monthly, typically? customer or prospect says, I don't know, about 40 a month, right? And how many of those 40 are directed, would you say? Prospect says, I don't know, 25 to 30. So response would be, okay, so you have like 10 to 15 per month that you may have some discretion. And the prospect says, yeah, something like that. And so we're gonna put that objection on an island and just say, okay, well, we're not talking about those. We understand that those you have no discretion, and those we can't compete for. But there are some that you do have some discretion, and those are the ones that we want to keep compete for. And so just keep us in mind. Now, you might find that some customers are uncomfortable discussing the number of closings that they do. They don't want to give you that data. You can have this same conversation with percentages, right? You can say, what percentage of your total orders, if you had to guess, are directed? And they might say 80%, right? So we're talking about 20%. 20% then are available, you have some discretion with. All right, so those are the 20% that we're competing on. Now, if they say all of them, 100%, I have no discretion on any of my orders, then either they're not being honest with you, or they are being honest with you, in which case you can't compete for their business. And maybe this is one of those accounts that you come back to at a later date. Second scenario, customer says to you, or prospect says, we prefer working with title companies that are local. Your response to that is, oh, okay, I see. Why is that? Let's dig into this. Customer or prospect, we just prefer working with someone who we can see face to face if a problem arises. You, that makes perfect sense. Exercising empathy. Let's dig a little deeper then, right? Which title companies do you work with then? Customer or prospect says, oh, well, we like Tryon and Investors and Attorneys Title. You say something like, well, those are all great title companies. Now, Tryon, let me ask you that. I thought that they were in Raleigh. Do they have an office here locally? The prospect says, oh, actually, no, but we really like their sales rep. He's great. And your response might be something like, oh, yeah, I know. I think I know who you're talking about. Yeah, he's a really nice guy. So it sounds like you may be willing to make an exception to your rule. And then the prospect has no choice but to confess. Yeah, sounds like you're probably right. And then maybe at that point you can go into your sales pitch. But the point here is that you were given an objection that was like, no, don't want to work with you because you're not local. But when you dug a little deeper, you found out that maybe they weren't, that wasn't as rigid of an objection as they made it seem. Scenario 3, customer or prospect tells you, we prefer working with offices that have an attorney on staff, right? So for Natasha and Janelyn and Jack and Amy, this may not be an objection for you, but for Denise's office and Teresa's office and Danita's office, this may be an objection that you have to deal with as a sales rep. So they tell you that and you say, okay, tell me about that. Why is that important to you, right? Digging a little deeper to try to understand the objection. The customer or prospect says, my boss, the attorney, always wants there to be a title counsel associated with any company that we work with. Your response would be something like, right, to answer questions that might come up. I get that. Well, we don't have an attorney physically in our office, but we have 2 counsel at our state office. Is your attorney familiar with Jim St. Sing or Margaret Cantiliner? Prospect turns to the attorney and says, hey, do you know Jim or Margaret? And the attorney says, yes, Margaret was my estates professor in law school. And then you can go into Margaret and Jim and how great they are and how the customer would have access to them on any deal that they work on. And so again, by digging a little deeper, you turned what it was an objection into something that really wasn't that big of a deal. Fourth scenario, customer or prospect says, we're happy with who we are currently, who we use currently. So basically, go away. Your response to that could be to just go away or say something like, wow, that's awesome. So they do everything perfectly. And that's great. Maybe they would say, well, I wouldn't go that far. Nobody's perfect, but they do take very good care of us. Oh, yeah, right, of course. Well, if you don't mind, I would like to explore this a bit with you, asking for permission to dig a little deeper. So what do they do well? Well, they are very good, they're very speedy, and they have access to prior policies. So if I hear you correctly, then getting your commitments back quickly and having access to priors is important to you. Customer says, right. Well, is there one thing maybe that they don't do as well? Customer responds, well, they don't have title counsel in their office. They have to go to the counsel for their underwriting, and sometimes that takes more time. You could respond with something like, yeah, no, I could totally see how that's frustrating for you, exercising empathy. And now what you've done by digging a little further is you have discovered what they want out of a title company, which is speed and access to priors. And you've also discovered another thing that they want that their current provider is not giving them, which is access to counsel. Right? So again, illustrating that if we just accept the objection, we don't dig a little deeper and try to understand it, then we may be leaving something on the table. Scenario 5, customer or prospect says, we really like treats, right? In other words, we can be bought, but we're not cheap, right? And we don't want people to use us because we ply them with treats. We want them to use us because we can satisfy their pain points. So bells may be going off, red alarms may be going off that, right, this is not a person we want to deal with. But let's dig a little deeper, right? Who doesn't like treats? What kind of treats do you like getting? Customer or prospect says, well, anything sweet, and oh, Starbucks. I hear you. I need my caffeine in the morning as well, right? Empathy. What do you like from Starbucks? Prospect says, oh, well, we love mocha frappuccinos. You say, there is a Starbucks right down the street from my office. I'd be happy to bring you something. They say, great. You say, let me ask you this. Other than treats, what else are you looking for in a title company? And they might say something like, well, if you get the policy to us first, then you're going to get the business, right? And then you can go into how your office might satisfy that pain point. So again, this is digging a little deeper and investigating and not accepting that the objection that they're giving you is really the true story. Yes, these folks might like treats, but when you dig a little further, what you determine is that whoever gets them the prior first gets the order. So it's not so much about the treats as it is about the priors. A few more scenarios. Scenario number 6. We just don't have any business right now. We literally have nothing to send you. So your response to that, empathy, yikes, that's awful. Tell me, what is happening with your business? Dig a little deeper. Our attorney is a great person and a really good lawyer, but she's just not much of a marketer. We keep encouraging her to get out there and talk to realtors, but she just won't do it. I'm sure that's really frustrating. Again, empathy, both for you and her. If it's okay with you, I'd like to flush this out a bit with you, asking for permission to dig a little bit deeper. What do you think the firm needs to do to get some more business? Customer or prospect? I think if we throw a happy hour and invited some real estate agents, maybe we could get some business that way. Your response to that could be, well, maybe I can help with that. What if we plan to join happy hour? Maybe we could help out with some of the expenses and you would get my party planning expertise for free. That sounds amazing. Okay, let's stay in touch and we'll work out some ideas together. I look forward to working with you. So Something that was a legitimate objection here, I don't have any business to send you, may turn into a partnership, a relationship in which you can help them, and they in turn will be grateful for that help and get you some orders in exchange. Scenario 7, I don't know you, and I'm not sure that I can trust you. So your response to that might be something like, I can respect that, empathy. Trust is something that is earned, not given. Can you tell me about your concerns? Digging a little deeper. Customer says, sales reps for the insurance companies are always coming in here and saying, we got your back, but I don't think any of them actually mean it. Whoa, something's going on here. What makes you say that? Did something happen? Customer says, well, yeah, one of these title companies that supposedly says they have our back dropped us when we did a closing that resulted in a claim. And they immediately took us off the approved attorney list. The claim wasn't even something that we could have prevented, but they didn't really seem to care. Wow, that really stinks. I am so sorry that happened, right? Empathy. And then maybe something like I said earlier, trust is something that is earned. There's nothing I can tell you to make you trust me, but I can tell you this, claims happen. We just processed one the other day, and we didn't drop the attorney as our customer. Leveraging social proof. It's really hard to get everything right all of the time. I can't promise you that our claims department, how they might handle a claim, but I can promise you that I will be available to talk to you and hear you out if anything negative were to happen. I'd like to keep visiting, and we'll see over time if we can earn your trust. How does that sound? So this person had something that was really bothering them. And by digging a little deeper, we had an opportunity to exercise our empathy and perhaps made a friend in the process. Last scenario, customer or prospect says, we used to do business with your company, but we had a really bad experience. All right, so that's an objection. Probably not a brush off. That's probably a legit objection. Your response is, oh my goodness, how long ago was that? What happened, right? Let's dig into this. Prospect says, well, it was about 5 years ago. Your office failed to issue a final title policy, and the lender got so mad at us that they took us off their approved attorney list, and now we can't do business with that lender anymore. Your response, something like, oh no, that's awful, exercising empathy. And then maybe something like, well, I wasn't working for Fidelity 5 years ago, but I have heard the stories. I joined the company about 18 months ago, and our current manager started about 3 years ago. And she and I were just discussing the issues the operation was having back then just the other day, and how much there was to fix when she came on board. I can't tell you that we're perfect now, but a lot of those old issues have been resolved. We are now issuing policies within 3 days of receiving the final title opinion from our customers. Customer says, wow, that's fast. Yeah, we have a really good team in place right now. I know you had this bad experience with us, and I certainly understand your hesitancy in working with us again, but I'm hoping that you might consider giving us another shot. So exercising empathy in a situation like this is probably the best direction that you can go into. Hear the person out, let them vent their frustration, exercise empathy, and then perhaps give them a pathway to moving forward by showing him or her how things have changed. So before we conclude, I want to go back to our intrepid sales rep and see if applying these steps has helped him in any way. Let me know if you cannot hear or see this.
I like your line, I like your prices. But there's a problem. There's no guarantee on the box.
Heck, if something breaks down, you can call me, even if I'm home watching TV.
Callahan has guaranteed every part sold since 1925.
Maybe so, but it's not on the box. It should always be on the box, comforting you, calling out, I'm good. I'll never let you down. But if I do, I'm going to make things all better.
Our brake pads are made with a non-corrosive polyplated...
Son, if you're not talking about a guarantee, skip it. My customers need to see that little label looking them right in the eye.
Hey, you can get a good look at your butcher.
What?
Remember, chicken wings, chicken wings.
All right, you want to talk about guarantees, then...
Fellas, you just ran out of time.
Chicken wings. Let's think about this for a sec, Ted. Why would somebody put a guarantee on a box? Very interesting.
Go on, I'm listening.
Here's the way I see it, Ted. Guy puts a fancy guarantee in a box because he wants you to feel all warm and toasty inside.
Yeah, makes a man feel good.
Of course it does. Why shouldn't it? You figure you put that little box under your pillow at night, the guarantee fairy might come by and leave a quarter. Am I right, Ted?
What's your point?
The point is, how do you know the fairy isn't a crazy glue sniffer? Building model airplanes, says the little fairy. Well, we're not buying it. He sneaks into your house once, that's all it takes. Next thing you know, there's money missing off the dresser and your daughter's knocked up. I've seen it 100 times.
But why do they put a guarantee on the box, then?
Because they know all they sold you was a guaranteed piece of shit. That's all it is, isn't it? Hey, if you want me to take a dump in a box and mark it guaranteed, I will. I got spare time. But for now, for your customer's sake, for your daughter's sake, you might want to think about buying a quality product from me.
Okay, I'll buy from you.
Oh, that's... What?
And now to something new and exciting in the AI space, Grammarly Go. It's a new
All right, so Tommy Boy learned a few things there. First of all, he heard out the objection, understood the objection, which was that he wanted the words guarantee on the box. Didn't matter that the product was guaranteed, he wanted the guarantee on the box. And what our sales rep in this instance convinced him was that the words on the box were less important than the quality of the product. So he got him to focus on the fact that the product is where his focus should be, not on some words on a box. So wrapping up, objections are an inevitable part of sales, right? We run into them, if not on a daily basis, then certainly on a weekly basis. Some of them are legitimate reasons that ultimately disqualify the prospect. Others are couched as an objection, but they're really an intent to brush us off. And if we follow the steps that I just laid out and we dig a little deeper, then we should be able to distinguish between legitimate objection and a brush off. And if there is a legitimate objection, we should have the ability to dig into that objection and see if there's any way that we can solve it, if we can handle that objection. At some point, we get no's, and the no's are legitimate objections to us moving forward. I would say, as a rule of thumb, if the prospect reiterates the objection more than once, it's probably real. And maybe that is just one where we live to fight another day. Lastly, a practice tip, role play. Find somebody who can role play with you, whether it's a coworker or an intimate, and practice with them about the words that you might use in particular situations. Practicing it allows you to find the right words through trial and error, right? As you go through it, you may decide, I don't like saying it that way. Let me try it another way. And if you practice it, you get some muscle memory. And when that objection pops up, you know not only how to tackle it, but the words that you want to use. Does anybody have any questions for me? Anything they want to add to the conversation or specific questions that you want to ask me? All right, I will take that as a no, which is fine. Next month, we're going to do things a little bit differently. We're going to break out into two separate groups. Sales reps and managers. We'll be meeting on the 27th, but sales reps, we're going to meet at 2 o'clock instead of 3. And we're going to discuss a little primer on title insurance. Managers, we're going to meet at 3:15, not 3. And we're going to talk about the book Drive by Daniel Pink. All of you should have a copy of that book. If you don't, let me know. And we'll just spend some time talking about the author's viewpoints in that book. Well, that's it, everybody. Thanks for your time. I appreciate you giving me 45 minutes today. And if any questions come up, or if there's anything you need help with from me or Summer, you know how to reach us. Thank you.
Thanks, bye.
Cindy, you still there?